Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and tonight I'm going to do which basically sort of a comparison between the Kennerton Vali and the Kennerton Thror. This isn't really a shootout. I mean, it wouldn't be a fair comparison. There's pretty big difference in price in these two headphones. The Thror is about 3.5 times the price of the Vali. So I'm not doing a shootout. What I want to do is, I really like both of these headphones, and I've had a lot of time with both of them and really have gotten to know these headphones. And they both have some really good qualities, but they're very different headphones and they're good at doing different things. So I thought I'd put together this little video here and do kind of a comparison and talk about what each headphone is really good at. And the Vali, I did a full review on it, well, first impressions, then a full review several months ago. And the Thror, I did a first impressions video, I think it was probably late December. And I've never done a full review on the Thror because I haven't had any other headphone in the same price bracket to really do a comparison. So I've never really been able to do a full review of it, which I intend to. I've got a pair of headphones that are sort of in the same price range as the Thror that are supposed to be coming in, and I've been waiting for them for a couple months now, and I guess there just hasn't been a pair available for review yet. So anyway, I'm hoping that happens soon, and I'm hoping to do the full review of the Thror. But anyway, in the meantime, I just wanted to do this, throw this comparison out there and talk about these two headphones. First of all, I wanted to talk about build quality. And these both being Kennertons, the build quality is outstanding on both of these. Even the lower priced Vali, which you can see here, this headphone, I'm not aware of any plastic on this headphone at all. There might be something inside, I'm not sure, that the driver mounts to that might be plastic or whatever, but the rest of the headphone, starting out, the ear cups, and these aren't a veneer, this is a solid chunk of Peruvian walnut. The grill on this is magnesium alloy. The yokes, the clamps, all that are all aircraft aluminum, and the headband, the head strap, and the ear pads are all made of real lambskin leather, which I don't think I'm not aware of any headphone under $1,000 using real lambskin leather for ear pads and all that. So like I said, the build quality is outstanding. The Thror, which has a pretty much identical headband. The clamps, the yokes are all pretty much the same, except they're painted black instead of the aluminum. The head strap's just a little bit wider inside here, but like I said, the same lambskin leather, everything here, the ear pads, all that, aluminum yokes. On these, the ear cup is zebrano wood, not sure where that's from. And then the grills, I'm not sure what these are. That might be plastic or it might be some sort of resin, I'm not sure. But anyway, so I can't say for sure that these don't have any plastic. But like I said, the build quality is just outstanding on these. The weight of these two headphones, they're both fairly heavy. The heavier of the two is the Vali that comes in at 520 grams. The Thror is 40 grams lighter at 480 grams. As far as comfort, I've heard a few people say that they thought the Vali was heavy, and it's not a light headphone. I think it's about the same weight as the Hi-Fi Man HE500, the older 500. But I personally find them more comfortable than the Hi-Fi Mans because they have a lot better ear pads on them. The Thror, not only is it a little bit lighter, but like I said, the head strap inside is a little bit wider. But the biggest difference is, even though the yokes and all that are the same width, the ear cups tend to flare out a little bit, which allows for a slightly bigger ear pad. I think these are, 105 millimeters in diameter, and on the Vali it's, I think, 95. But anyway, what that translates to is a larger opening around the ear, and I really like that because I just, I really don't like anything touching my ears, you know, like the tops, the backs, whatever. So I actually find the Thror very comfortable. The Vali, once in a while, I feel it touch my ear a little bit. Not uncomfortable, but the Thror is a little bit lighter and a little bit more comfortable of the two. Efficiency. These are both really efficient headphones for what they are. Okay, the Vali is a dynamic driver, which normally in most cases are pretty efficient unless they're high impedance, and the Thror is actually a planar magnetic type driver, which in most cases are not efficient at all, but this is actually the most efficient planar magnetic type of headphone that I've had a chance to hear or review so far. The Vali comes in at 32 ohms, and it's rated at 100 decibels at 1 milliwatt, which makes it actually a very efficient headphone, very easy to drive. It puts it in about the same class as like the Grotto SR80E. It's just a very easy headphone to drive. The Thror is also 100 decibels at 100 milliwatts, but is a little bit higher impedance at 42 ohms. So it's slightly harder to drive, but far, far more efficient than any of the Hi-Fi Man planar magnetic headphones that I've reviewed. So also, you know, just very easy to drive for that type of headphone. Which gets down to amp requirements, and basically what I found, and I've been through probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 amps I've reviewed in the last several months, and I had a chance to use the Vali with, and the Vali pretty much works with every amp I've tried it with. The Vali is not picky about amps at all, and pretty much every amp I have tried, the Vali brings out the best in that amp. And like I said, it's efficient, doesn't need a lot of power, and even I've got right now an Echo, a Felix Audio Echo tube amp, which is actually you know, not ideal for low efficiency headphones. It's an OTL type tube amp, and normally those work well with high impedance headphones, and actually both of these headphones sound outstanding with that amp. So like I said, neither one. The Thror needs a little bit more power, but I haven't found an amp yet that comes up short on power with either of these headphones. Like I said, both very easy to drive. So you do not need to spend a lot of money on an amp with either one of these. That Felix Audio Echo, which sells for, I think, 499 euros. And I think both of these headphones sound outstanding with that. So like I said, you don't have to spend a fortune on amps on either one of these. Of course, I've tried some more expensive amps. I've got the Audio GD Master 9, which both of these sound outstanding with that. Right now I've got in on review SPL Phonitor XE, and which is an outstanding amp, and both of these headphones sound absolutely great with that amp. I don't think I mentioned price yet. there's a pretty big difference. The Vali right now, and it depends on what type of wood you get, but I think the price starts at about 850 euros, which works out at today's exchange rate to about $947. The Thror, and you also have a choice of different types of wood, and that affects the price, but with this particular wood, the Zebrano, the current price on this is 3,055 euros, which works out at today's exchange rate to $3,404. Getting into the sound of these, the tone balance, I would describe the Vali as not necessarily neutral. I would say a little bit on the warm side of neutral, and I would say a little on the bassy side of neutral. A little bit of emphasis, especially in the mid bass on this, would keep it from being what I would call an absolutely neutral headphone, but I'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes about the bass on this, because I love the bass on this headphone. So I've got no complaints at all about it not being neutral. It's a great sounding headphone. As far as tone balance on the Thror, I would say this is absolutely dead on neutral. If you are looking for an absolutely neutral headphone that isn't going to color the sound or alter the sound at all, and is going to play back the music exactly the way it was recorded, the Thror is that headphone. Absolutely dead neutral. As far as extension, frequency extension, the Vali doesn't go super deep into the low frequencies, into the sub bass, but it doesn't lack at all. You know, it gets down plenty low, and the mid bass on this is so good that I don't think you will ever miss the fact that it doesn't go super low. Also on the top end, tends to roll off a little bit in the upper treble. Not really lacking anything, but just doesn't, you know, go into the real high treble like the Thror does. The Thror, the extension is really good on this. The bass goes really low, and the treble goes really high as I can hear. Really good extension on both ends, no roll off at all on either end. The difference is in the mid bass between these two headphones. That would be probably the biggest difference, where the Thror is just absolutely neutral, playing back the music exactly, you know, as it should be. Like I said, no emphasis at all anywhere. The Vali, the bass, and I'd say a lot of this has to do with the dynamics, but it's also part of the tone. There's a little bit of emphasis in the mid bass, not enough to drown out or overwhelm the mid range or anything like that. Just a slight, you know, I would say compared to like some of the Hi-Fi Man headphones and all that, you would probably have to boost them about 3 or 4 decibels in the bass to get them on the same level as this, but they don't produce the quality of bass this does. The mid bass on this is just outstanding. It's punchy, it's dynamic, it hits hard, and the thing that just kind of blew me away is the detail and the texture in the mid bass of this, which I had never heard from before from any headphone. I mean, I'm hearing detail in the mid bass that no other headphone I've reviewed or heard so far has been able to reproduce. So basically going through the frequencies on this, sub bass doesn't go super low, but goes low enough that I don't miss anything really. Mid bass, you know, like I said, dynamic, punchy, textured. The mid-range, I would say, is very neutral on this, right where it should be. The treble, mid-treble, very good. Up in the frequencies of cymbals and all that. Very clear, crisp. Does a very good job. Just a little bit of roll-off in the upper treble, but not, like I said, not missing, just slightly rolled off. The Thror, a little bit better bass extension, but doesn't have the punch and the dynamics of the Vali in the mid bass. Very well balanced bass, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think it's lacking at all. It's exactly where it should be. It's very, if you're looking for neutral and no coloration of the sound, the bass is exactly where it should be, in my opinion, on this headphone. Getting into the mid-range, perfectly neutral, nothing lacking, nothing emphasized. The treble, same thing, mid, beautiful treble on this. Mid and upper treble are just beautiful in my opinion. Some of the best treble I've heard anywhere from any headphone. The clarity of the treble, the detail, I haven't heard anything that can compete with it yet. As far as dynamics, I would say the Thror has kind of average dynamics. In fact, I did a review of the Hi-Fi Man Aria recently, and I would say the Thror is actually a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more punchy than the Aria, so it doesn't lack dynamics at all. What really stands out about the Vali is very, very dynamic, very punchy. I mean, drums, bass, everything just jumps out of it. Even like up into the mid-range, like piano notes and all that, they're just very, very dynamic and just really jump out at you. Very, just a very dynamic, punchy sound coming out of these headphones. Really like it. As far as detail and resolution, clarity, that whole, anyway, the Vali is not lacking at all. When I first got the Vali, the first maybe couple weeks, I kind of thought that the upper mid-range was slightly veiled and maybe a little bit lacking in detail. And it seems to me that, and I know the idea of burn-in with headphones is questionable. Some people say that it doesn't exist. A lot of people say that it's just your hearing or your brain adjusting to the headphone. But the fact is, I listen to a lot of different headphones and jump around between headphones. And comparing this to some of the others, like some of the Hi-Fi Man headphones, it sounded just slightly lacking in detail in the upper mid-range. And after I had a couple of months on them, that seemed to clear up, and I don't hear that anymore. So now, when I compare this directly to, like, say, the Hi-Fi Man Sundara or even the, more expensive Aria, it doesn't seem to have that slight lack of detail like it did originally. So, I think that, putting a couple hundred hours on these did improve them in that respect. But, like I said, that whole point can be argued. But I would say the detail on these is right up there with anything else, in a similar price range, not lacking at all. Compared to the Thror though, the detail on these is just outstanding. I mean, these are gonna pull every little detail out of a recording that is there. If there is a sound buried in that recording somewhere, you are going to hear it with this headphone. I mean, even compared to the Hi-Fi Man Aria, the detail was even better on these. I mean, these just dig down deep, and if you want to hear every last detail on a recording, this headphone's gonna pull that out and give it to you. As far as the Soundstage, the Vali, has actually, they're both open back headphones, so they've also both got a large soundstage. The Vali isn't quite as big as the Thror. The Vali has sort of an average width and average depth to the soundstage. I would say the Thror goes a little beyond average. In fact, the Hi-Fi Man Aria that has a huge soundstage, as far as width and height, the Thror wasn't very far behind it. Just not quite as wide and didn't have quite the height of the Aria soundstage, but actually has more depth. And that's what's really outstanding about the Thror. So I would say it's got a larger than normal soundstage as far as width, but also larger than normal as far as depth. You know, the ability to really hear things out a long way. Plus, which really seems to be kind of unique about this headphone, and what I really enjoy about it, is the soundstage is very layered and has a three-dimensional sound to it. You know, not just out here, but, you know, multiple layers in between, and not just out here, but, you know, multiple layers going out, and just a really three-dimensional soundstage. And not criticizing the Vali at all as far as the soundstage, but the Thror has an outstanding three-dimensional layered soundstage that the Vali just can't reproduce, but I haven't heard any other headphones that can reproduce that yet either. So that's why I haven't done my full review on this headphone, because I probably got to get, you know, into $3,000 headphones before I'm going to find anything that compares with this as far as detail or the soundstage. As far as imaging and separation, both do a really good job. Both you can really pinpoint where the instruments are coming from, and both you can really hear the separation between the instruments where they don't bleed in together. Where the Thror kind of pulls away is the separation is more three-dimensional. So you hear, you know, not just the imaging and the soundstage both, but the imaging, where with the Vali you can pinpoint where each instrument's at, but they kind of sound the same distance, where the Thror, you've got more differences in depth to each, you know, instrument you're hearing. So it's more layered and more three-dimensional. So I did want to mention that both of these headphones do respond to EQ very well. I've got a shit Loki and I've messed around with EQ, and I mentioned that the Vali, sometimes I feel that the upper treble rolls off just a little bit, and I found out with the Loki I can boost the treble at 8,000 hertz. Just doesn't take much, 2 or 3 decibel boost, and brings out you know, just a little more detail in the upper treble. And that might just be me, because see, you know, I'm 55 years old, and you know, I'm getting old, and my hearing, I'm guessing that my ability to hear high frequencies has probably dropped off a little bit. So, you know, when I say, you know, the treble rolls off slightly, might not be the case. That might be my ears, you know, because I mean, I really like the treble in most Hi-Fi Man headphones, and some people find them a little bright. So if you find the treble a little bright in Hi-Fi Man headphones, the treble might be perfect in these for you. So anyway, and then with the Thror, it doesn't have that impact and punch in the mid bass like the Vali does, but same thing. You know, I can give a little boost at 20 hertz, and you know, doesn't, like I said, doesn't take much. Probably 2, 3, maybe 4 decibels at the most, a boost, and it makes this headphone, you know, it gives it that extra punch and extra slam in the bass that it doesn't have, and which really isn't natural or neutral, but if that's what you want or the music you're listening to, needs a little bit of boost, they do handle it very well. It doesn't distort, and, you can customize the sound to be exactly what you want with this headphone. As far as what these headphones are good at, they're both good at different things, really, and I think they really complement each other well. I know a lot of people aren't satisfied with just one headphone. They want a second headphone, depending on the music you're listening to, or just kind of depending on the mood you're in at the time. Sometimes I'm in a mood to hear things, just dead on neutral, the way they should hear, or the way they should sound. Other times, depending on the music I'm listening to, I want it a little punchy, I want some bass and all that. So really, these two headphones will cover just about every kind of music I could ever imagine listening to. The strong points and what I would say the Vali is very good at, I would describe the sound as, like I said, a little on the warm side of neutral, very dynamic, very punchy, and I would say just the opposite of being thin. I would describe the sound as thick and rich and creamy on the Vali. Probably the best bass, especially the mid bass of any headphone, of any headphone I've heard. Just incredible detail and texture in the bass. And basically this headphone just makes everything sound good. You don't have to look for the absolute best recordings. Pretty much anything you want to listen to is going to sound good on the Vali. It doesn't matter. I mean, even, moderate quality recordings are going to sound good. Even recordings that are a little lacking in bass are going to sound good. It doesn't matter. Just pretty much everything sounds good out of these headphones. Okay, the Thror is a little more picky. First of all, the Thror, the strong points of this headphone are incredible clarity, detail, and resolution. It is going to find every sound on that recording, but there is a problem with that that's not always good, because if there are any flaws in the recording, if the recording is not perfectly done, you will hear it with this headphone. I mean, any little background noise, anything in that recording that wasn't supposed to be there, the sound of a chair scooting, the sound of someone coughing in the background, I mean, you can hear fingers sliding up and down the guitar strings like I've never heard on another headphone. If the noise floor of a recording has a little bit of hiss in it, you're going to hear it with this headphone, because it just picks up everything. But what this headphone does great, I personally really like female vocals, and I'm just blown away by how real female vocals sound out of this headphone. Just incredible. Especially, like I said, male vocals too, but female vocals, upper, mid-range, lower treble, it's just incredible how real things sound through this headphone. Pianos, especially the, upper half of the keyboard of the piano, which is really hard for headphones or even speakers to reproduce, just sounds so real with this headphone. The Soundstage it has width, it has depth, it is layered, and just sounds more three-dimensional than anything else I've ever heard. So basically, this headphone thrives on good recordings. The Vali, like I said, sounds good with pretty much any music. Sounds good on the Vali. And the little bit it's lacking in detail compared to the Thror you're not going to notice on probably 90% of music. 90% of the music that I listen to, the Valley is going to pull out every detail in that music. There's only some music only has so much detail, and going to a headphone like the Thror isn't going to really make a difference. It's just those exceptional recordings, maybe, 10, maybe even only 5% of the music I listen to is recorded so well that the Thror is going to find some extra detail there that the Valley doesn't get. So yeah, the Thror just thrives on really, really good recordings. But if a recording is not, not the best recording, it's probably going to sound better on the Valley, because the Valley isn't going to reveal the little flaws in the recording. And to give an example, one of the CDs I listen to a lot, it's recorded really well, but it does have a flaw, and that would be Sarah McLachlan. I think it's called Fumbling Towards Ecstasy. It's a really well-recorded album, but there's a couple songs, I'm thinking track 2 and track 8 maybe, that there's a little bit of breakup in Sarah's voice. And, I think they, might have saturated the recording a little bit. But anyway, the Valley kind of smooths that over, and it's not really, to the point of being annoying, where the Thror really makes that pretty obvious that they made a mistake. Like I said, just a little bit, her voice gets a little bit distorted in a couple of those songs. And like I said, the Thror is just so revealing that it's going to bring stuff like that out. Basically what it's come down to with me, and I mean, these are pretty much the two headphones that I listen to the most. For if I'm listening to rock or electronic or dance music, I'm still a really big fan of like 80s new wave. I also like industrial music, like Nine Inch Nails, Ministry, stuff like that. And for that kind of music, the Valley is just absolutely perfect. I mean, some of the stuff I've listened to, Nine Inch Nails, Pretty Hate Machine was one. I'd never heard it sound better than I've heard it on this. I was listening to some REM, older REM on these a while back, and they sounded the best I had ever heard it. And I'm talking any headphone, any speaker. And what else? New Order from back in the 80s. I was listening to that, just sounded outstanding on the Valley. So if I'm listening to those types of music, rock, electronic, new wave, industrial, dance, that sort of thing, this is my choice, first choice of headphone. Those types of music sound outstanding on this headphone. Okay, things like jazz, orchestral, acoustical, I'm not saying they sound bad on this headphone. They still sound good, but if I have the Thror available, I'm going to pick the Thror for those. So, the Thror. Rock, electronic dance and all that, because of the very neutral tuning, I feel like they're lacking a little bit in the bass in that type of music. And like I said, it's not that the headphone's doing anything wrong, it's just that when I'm listening to that type of music, I like it to have a little more, impact to the bass. And if I want to EQ it, like I said, this handles EQing well, and I can boost the bass a little bit and make this sound exactly the way I want to. And in that respect, I can listen to any type of music I want with this. But if I'm not EQing the rock, electronic, that sort of stuff, I actually prefer the Valley for that type of music. Getting into jazz, and especially anything acoustical and orchestral is where this headphone really stands out. So if you are into orchestral, any kind of classical music, this headphone is outstanding. And the way I feel is that's what this headphone was made for. Anything acoustical just sounds so incredibly real with this headphone. And classical music, I can sit here listening to these headphones, and I was listening to some Tchaikovsky with them, and I could just, I felt like I was in the front row of a concert, and I could just separate every single instrument, which direction it was coming from, and pick up the depth of if it was up front, if it was in the middle of the orchestra, if it was in the back. And I just felt like I was there. No other headphone has taken me anywhere close to the feeling like I was there at the concert listening to classical music the way that the Thror does. Like I said, the Vali is a great all-around headphone. No complaints at all. Really stands out with rock, electronic dance, that sort of thing. The Thror is good for those things, but in my opinion, can use a couple decibels of bass boost with that type of music. But for jazz, orchestral, acoustical music, female vocals, this headphone is just outstanding in my opinion. So, that's the strong points of it. So like I said, I've got no complaints at all about either of these headphones. This isn't even really a review, it's sort of a comparison of the two that I thought I would do, because, most people assume they're both Kennertons, they're both going to sound the same, because, the truth is I've heard probably half a dozen different Hi-Fi Man headphones, and they all have sort of the same sound signature. There's really not any big differences, but these two Kennerton headphones are two completely different sounding headphones. And if you've heard one without hearing the other, don't assume you know how it's going to sound, because like I said, just two completely different sounding headphones that each works very well at its own type of music, doing its own type of things. So, like I said, a big price difference too. And yeah, without a doubt, the Thror is the better headphone. If you're looking for absolute neutrality, you want to hear everything that's on the recording, you want to hear it exactly the way it should sound, the Thror is a choice. If you just want a really fun headphone that makes everything sound good, it's got a little bit of emphasis in the bass and just has a lot of punch and dynamics, the Vali is probably the right choice. And like I said, it's got a little bit of emphasis in the bass, but not like some headphones that I've heard that drowns out the lower mid-range or even up into the middle mid-range. Doesn't do that at all. Those are perfectly fine on their own, and the bass doesn't interfere at all. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to tell you how I felt after spending a lot of time with both these headphones and let you know what they're all about. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you're all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.